You exhaust yourself trying to be perfect for everyone, yet somehow you still feel invisible and unappreciated in your relationships and career. Every conversation becomes a performance where you say what you think others want to hear, leaving you feeling like a fraud who's constantly walking on eggshells, never truly connecting with anyone. I am Dale Carnegie, and I spent decades studying human nature and teaching millions of people how to build genuine influence and authentic relationships. What I discovered about the futility of trying to impress everyone will liberate you from the exhausting prison of people-pleasing and show you how to build real connections that actually matter. The same principles that help shy, anxious people become confident leaders can transform your relationships from surface-level performances into deep, meaningful connections that enrich your life. But first, like this video, subscribe for more life-changing insights, and comment below where you're watching from. I want to know which corner of the world is ready to stop performing and start connecting authentically. Let me take you back to a small farm in Missouri, where I learned my first painful lesson about trying to impress others. I was just a boy, attending a one-room red schoolhouse, and I lived in constant terror of being called upon to speak. My hands would shake, my voice would crack, and I could feel every eye in that room judging me for my awkwardness and my shabby clothes. I remember one particular morning when the teacher asked me to recite a poem in front of the class. I had practiced it 100 times at home, but standing there under the scrutinizing gaze of my classmates, every word vanished from my mind. I stammered and stumbled, my face burning with shame as snickers echoed through the classroom. That night, I made a promise to myself that I would never again be caught unprepared, never again be seen as less than perfect. For years, I threw myself into trying to impress everyone around me. I memorized facts and figures, polished my speaking until it was flawless, and carefully crafted every word to make the best possible impression. I became obsessed with how others perceived me, constantly adjusting my personality like a chameleon, changing colors to match its surroundings. But here's what I discovered through all that effort. The harder I tried to impress people, the more artificial I became. The more perfect my presentations, the less people seemed to connect with me. I was like a beautifully painted sign that caught attention but left no lasting impression on the heart. The breakthrough came during my college years, when I was forced to give an impromptu speech with no preparation. Standing before that audience, I had no choice but to speak from my heart about something I genuinely cared about: my father's struggles as a farmer and the dignity I saw in his calloused hands. My voice trembled, not from fear this time, but from genuine emotion. I forgot about impressing anyone and simply shared what mattered to me. That day, something magical happened. People didn't just politely applaud, they approached me afterward, with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories and struggles. I realized that my vulnerability, my authentic emotion, had created a connection that all my polished performances never could. This revelation changed the entire trajectory of my life. I began studying why authentic moments resonated so much more powerfully than perfect presentations. I observed that people were drawn not to those who seemed flawless, but to those who seemed real. The farm boy in me, the one I had been trying to hide, was actually my greatest asset. From that red schoolhouse to lecture halls across America, my journey taught me that the very things we try to hide about ourselves, our imperfections, our struggles, our genuine emotions, are often what others find most compelling about us. Asterisk, I want you to imagine a beautiful golden cage. From the outside, it appears luxurious and enviable, but inside, the inhabitant paces restlessly, trapped by invisible bars made of other people's expectations. This is exactly what we create when we build our lives around the opinions of others. During my years of teaching and observing human nature, I discovered that most people live their entire lives in this gilded prison. They wake up each morning asking not, what do I want to accomplish today, but how can I make sure everyone approves of me today? They choose their words, their clothes, their career paths, even their life partners, based on what they believe will impress others. I watched countless students come to my classes, paralyzed by the fear of judgment. They would sit in the back row, avoid eye contact, and speak only when absolutely necessary. When I asked them what they wanted most in life, their answers revealed the same pattern. They wanted to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as successful in others' eyes. But here's the cruel irony I observed. The more desperately someone tries to gain approval, the less likely they are to receive it. People can sense desperation like a bloodhound detects a scent. When someone is constantly adjusting their personality to please others, they become like a reflection in a funhouse, mirror distorted and impossible to connect with authentically. I remember one student, Margaret, who was so concerned with saying the right thing that she would rehearse casual conversations in her head. She studied people like a scientist, trying to decode what would make them like her. But her relationships remained shallow and unsatisfying, because no one ever met the real Margaret. Even she had forgotten who that was. The tragedy is that this prison is entirely self-constructed. We hand our jailers the keys and then wonder why we feel trapped. We give others the power to determine our worth, our happiness, our very sense of self. We become addicted to external validation like a drug, always needing more to feel okay about ourselves. What most people don't realize is that while they're frantically trying to manage others' perceptions, those same people are too busy managing their own image to pay much attention to anyone else. We're all so focused on how we appear that we barely notice how others appear. It's like a room full of people, each staring into their own mirror, worried that everyone else is judging their reflection. The exhaustion of constant performance is what finally breaks people. They realize that no matter how hard they try, they cannot control what others think. Someone will always disapprove. Someone will always find fault. Someone will always prefer a different version of you than the one you're presenting. True freedom begins the moment you realize that other people's opinions of you are none of your business. Their thoughts about you say more about them than they do about you. Asterisk, asterisk. The most liberating truth I ever discovered about human nature came to me during a dinner party in New York. I was watching the guests, all accomplished people, and I noticed something remarkable. Each person was far more interested in talking about themselves than listening to others talk about themselves. It was like watching compasses in a room, every needle pointed inward. This observation led me to what I consider the fundamental principle of human relations. People are primarily absorbed in themselves, their own problems, their own desires, their own fears. While you're lying awake at night worrying about that awkward thing you said at the office, your colleague has completely forgotten about it because they're too busy replaying their own awkward moments. I tested this theory everywhere I went. In restaurants, I would listen to conversations at nearby tables. At business meetings, I would observe who people really focused on. In my classes, I would watch where students' attention naturally gravitated. The pattern was always the same. People's attention was like a spotlight, that they constantly shined on themselves. This revelation completely transformed my understanding of why trying to impress others is such a futile exercise. When you walk into a room desperately hoping to make a good impression, you're operating under the false assumption that everyone is paying attention to you and forming judgments about your every move. In reality, they're thinking about their own appearance, their own performance, their own insecurities. I remember conducting an experiment with one of my classes. I had students deliberately make small social mistakes, wearing mismatched socks, mispronouncing a word, dropping their papers. Then I had them survey others about what they noticed. The results were astounding. Most people didn't notice anything at all, and those who did notice forgot about it within minutes. This principle explains why your most embarrassing moments feel so significant to you but are completely forgettable to others. That time you tripped walking into an important meeting, you replayed it for months, but your colleagues probably forgot about it before the meeting even started. That awkward joke that fell flat at the dinner party, you're the only one still thinking about it. Understanding this truth is incredibly freeing. It means that most of your anxiety about others' judgments is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how human attention works. People simply don't have the mental bandwidth to scrutinize your every action when they're busy managing their own lives. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When you stop trying to impress people and start showing genuine interest in them, you actually become more impressive. When you shift that spotlight from yourself to others, you give them something they rarely receive: undivided attention focused on their interests, their problems, their dreams. I've seen shy, awkward individuals become magnetic simply by mastering this principle. They stopped worrying about whether they were interesting and started being interested. They stopped performing and started listening. They stopped trying to be impressive and started being impressed by others. The irony is beautiful. The moment you stop trying to capture people's attention for yourself, you naturally gain their attention because you're offering them something precious. The experience of feeling truly seen and heard. **** In my office, I kept an unpolished diamond that a student once gave me. Rough and unremarkable at first glance, it possessed something that all the artificial gems in the world couldn't match. It was real. This diamond became my reminder that authenticity, like that raw stone, has an inherent value that no amount of artificial polish can replicate. Throughout my career, I studied thousands of people who possessed what we call natural magnetism. I wanted to understand what made certain individuals so compelling, so trustworthy, so memorable. What I discovered surprised me. It wasn't their perfection that drew people to them, it was their willingness to be imperfect, to be human, to be real. I remember a student named Robert who came to my classes because he felt he lacked charisma. He was convinced that successful people possessed some special quality he was missing. Robert was brilliant, accomplished, and hard-working, but he felt invisible in social and professional settings. He had studied successful people and tried to copy their mannerisms, their speaking styles, even their clothing choices. The transformation began when I convinced Robert to stop imitating others and start being himself. During one class exercise, instead of delivering a polished presentation about business strategy, he spoke passionately about his struggles growing up in poverty and how it motivated his work ethic. His voice cracked with emotion as he described his mother working 3 jobs to support their family. Something magical happened in that room. People leaned forward, completely captivated. After he finished, the class erupted in genuine applause, the polite clapping we give to impressive performances, but the warm, sustained applause we reserve for something that touches our hearts. Robert had discovered his superpower, his authentic story, his genuine emotions, his real experiences. This pattern repeated itself countless times in my classes and observations. The most compelling people weren't those with perfect resumes or flawless presentations. They were those brave enough to show their humanity. They shared their failures alongside their successes, their doubts alongside their convictions, their fears alongside their dreams. Authenticity creates what I call emotional permission. When someone is willing to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to show genuine emotion, they give others permission to do the same. This creates a level of connection that polished perfection can never achieve. People don't connect with your strengths as much as they connect with your struggles. I've watched naturally charismatic people and they all share certain characteristics. They laugh at themselves before others can laugh at them. They admit when they don't know something. They show genuine curiosity about others, and they're comfortable with silence rather than filling every moment with impressive words. The confidence that comes from self-acceptance is unmistakable. When you stop trying to hide your imperfections, you discover that most people find them endearing rather than off-putting. When you stop apologizing for who you are, others stop questioning your worth. Your authentic self is not something you need to create or discover, it's something you need to stop hiding. Every mask you wear, every persona you adopt, every performance you deliver moves you further away from the very thing that would make you most compelling. Your genuine, imperfect, beautifully human self. The people who remember you, who seek you out, who want to work with you and be around you, are drawn not to your perfection, but to your authenticity. They're attracted to the courage it takes to be real in a world that rewards pretense. Asterisk. I once attended a business dinner where I witnessed a masterclass in the difference between genuine interest and artificial flattery. Two salesmen were competing for the same client's attention, and their approaches couldn't have been more different. The first salesman spent the evening showering the client with compliments about his expensive watch, his success, his beautiful wife. Every comment felt calculated, designed to impress and flatter. The client smiled politely but remained distant. The second salesman, however, asked the client about his recent fishing trip and listened intently as the man described his passion for He asked thoughtful follow-up questions about techniques, favorite spots, and the patience required for the sport. By evening's end, guess which salesman earned the client's business? The one who had shown genuine curiosity about something that client truly cared about. The client later told me, "I could tell the first fellow was just trying to butter me up, but the second one actually cared about what interested me." This observation reinforced a principle I'd been developing throughout my career. There's a world of difference between trying to be interesting and being interested. When you're trying to be interesting, you're performing, showcasing your knowledge, your achievements, your wit. When you're being interested, you're connecting, discovering what matters to others, what excites them, what challenges them. I've watched people transform their relationships simply by shifting from "how can I impress this person" to "what can I learn from this person?" The magic happens when your curiosity becomes genuine rather than strategic. People can sense the difference immediately. Artificial flattery feels hollow because it serves the flatterer, not the recipient. It's like offering someone a beautiful gift box that's empty inside. Genuine interest, on the other hand, offers something precious, the experience of feeling truly seen and valued for who they are, not just what they can do for you. I learned to ask questions that revealed real interest. What part of your work energizes you most? Instead of "you must be very successful," or "what drew you to that career path?" Instead of "you're obviously very talented." The difference is subtle but profound. One seeks to understand, the other seeks to impress. The techniques are simple but powerful. Instead of waiting for your turn to speak, listen for what genuinely fascinates you about their response. Instead of formulating your next impressive comment, ask a follow-up question that shows you've been paying attention. Instead of relating everything back to your own experience, explore their unique perspective. I've seen reserved individuals become magnetic conversationalists simply by mastering this principle. They stopped trying to dazzle people with their knowledge and started being dazzled by others' experiences. They discovered that curiosity is more attractive than cleverness, that questions can be more powerful than answers. When you show genuine interest in others, you're offering them something rare and valuable, undivided attention in a distracted world. You're saying, your thoughts matter, your experiences are worth hearing, your perspective has value. This gift creates connection in a way that no amount of impressive talk ever could. Asterisk. The most liberating moment in my teaching career came when I realized that trying to please everyone was not only was undesirable. I was conducting a workshop for business leaders, and one participant challenged everything I said. His criticism was harsh and public, and I felt my old instincts kick in the desperate need to win him over, to prove my worth, to make him like me. But something different happened that day. Instead of bending over backward to accommodate his criticism, I stood firm in my principles while remaining respectful. I acknowledged his perspective, but didn't abandon my own. To my surprise, by the end of the session, several other participants approached me privately to thank me for not backing down. They respected my willingness to maintain my position under pressure. That day taught me a profound lesson. Sometimes being disliked by some people is the price of being respected by others. When you try to please everyone, you end up standing for nothing. When you're willing to be disliked for your principles, you attract people who share your values. I began studying successful leaders and noticed a common trait: they all had people who disliked them. Abraham Lincoln faced fierce opposition, yet he's remembered as one of our greatest presidents. Theodore Roosevelt made enemies with his reforms, but he changed the country. Every person who has stood for something meaningful has faced criticism and disapproval. The courage to be disliked doesn't mean being disagreeable or confrontational. It means being willing to hold your ground when your principles are at stake. It means choosing integrity over popularity, authenticity over acceptance, respect over being liked. I taught my students to distinguish between being disagreeable and disagreeing. You can disagree with someone's position while remaining agreeable as a person. You can challenge ideas while respecting the individual. You can be firm in your convictions while being kind in your delivery. One of my most successful students, Helen, struggled with this principle initially. She was so afraid of conflict that she agreed with everyone about everything. Her relationships were pleasant but superficial because no one knew what she actually believed. When she finally found the courage to express her real opinions respectfully but firmly, something beautiful happened. She lost a few acquaintances who preferred the agreeable version of her, but she gained deeper friendships with people who appreciated her honesty. The paradox is striking. When you stop desperately trying to be liked by everyone, you become more likable to the people who matter. Your authenticity attracts those who value genuine character. Your willingness to disagree respectfully demonstrates confidence and integrity. I learned that respect is more valuable than being liked. People might not always agree with you, but they'll respect your willingness to stand for something. They'll trust you because they know you won't simply tell them what you think they want to hear. Asterisk. The freedom that comes from accepting that not everyone will like you is profound. You stop walking on eggshells, stop censoring your thoughts, stop contorting yourself to fit others' expectations. You discover that the people who matter most are those who appreciate you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. When you have the courage to be disliked, you attract your tribe people who share your values, respect your principles, and appreciate your authenticity. These relationships are worth far more than 1,000 superficial connections built on people-pleasing. Asterisk. I'll never forget the day I discovered that I don't know could be more powerful than pretending to know everything. I was giving a lecture to a group of executives when someone asked me a complex question about international trade regulations. My old instinct was to fumble through an answer to maintain my image as an expert. Instead, I said something that surprised even me. I don't know the answer to that, but it's a fascinating question. Can you tell me more about your experience with this issue? The room shifted. Instead of losing credibility, I had gained it. The executive who asked the question lit up and shared valuable insights from his own experience. Other participants joined the discussion, and we all learned something new. By admitting my ignorance, I had created space for genuine learning and connection. This experience taught me that an empty cup can be filled, but a full cup cannot receive anything new. When we pretend to know everything, we close ourselves off from learning. When we admit our limitations, we open ourselves to growth and create opportunities for others to share their expertise. I began studying people who naturally attracted others, and I noticed they shared a remarkable trait. They were comfortable with not knowing. They asked questions without embarrassment. They admitted mistakes without shame. They approached conversations with the curiosity of a student rather than the need to prove themselves as teachers. One of my most memorable students was Thomas, a brilliant engineer who initially struggled in social situations because he felt compelled to demonstrate his expertise in every conversation. He would interrupt others to correct minor details or share related technical knowledge. People found him exhausting to talk with. Despite his obvious intelligence, the transformation began when Thomas learned to ask questions instead of providing answers. Instead of correcting someone's minor misunderstanding about bridge construction, he would ask, "What's been your experience with construction projects?" Instead of explaining aerodynamics when someone mentioned flying, he would inquire, "What do you enjoy most about traveling?" The change was remarkable. Thomas discovered that people were far more interesting than he had ever imagined. A barista had fascinating insights about customer psychology. A taxi driver had traveled to more countries than most diplomats. A janitor had observations about human behavior that rivaled those of trained psychologists. Admitting ignorance became Thomas's superpower. People began seeking him out at social gatherings, not because he was the smartest person in the room, but because he made them feel like they were. His genuine curiosity made others feel valued and heard. I learned that asking questions serves multiple purposes beyond gathering information. It shows respect for others' knowledge and experience. It demonstrates humility and openness to learning. It creates engagement by involving others in the conversation rather than lecturing them. The most powerful questions aren't those that showcase your intelligence, but those that reveal your genuine interest in understanding. "How did you learn to do that?" is more engaging than "I know exactly what you mean. What was that experience like for you?" Creates more connection than "something similar happened to me." When you approach conversations with the mindset of a student rather than a teacher, something magical happens. People become more animated, more open, more willing to share their real thoughts and experiences. They associate you with the pleasure of feeling heard and understood, which is far more valuable than being impressed by your knowledge. Asterisk, asterisk, I once watched a man destroy a 20-year friendship in 15 minutes over an argument about whether the Civil War ended in 1865 or 1866. He was right about the date, but he lost something far more valuable than he gained. The chess pieces of their relationship lay scattered and broken, a casualty of his need to be right at all costs. This scene taught me one of the most important lessons about human relations. You can win an argument and lose a relationship, or you can lose an argument and keep a friend. The choice is always yours, but you rarely get to have both. Throughout my career, I observed countless relationships damaged by people who couldn't resist the temptation to prove others wrong. They would pounce on factual errors, correct minor misstatements, and argue over trivial details. They were technically right, but relationally wrong. They won battles while losing wars. The ego loves being right. It feeds on the satisfaction of proving superior knowledge, better logic, more accurate information. But the ego's victories are often Pyrrhic victories, won at too great a cost. When you make someone feel foolish for being wrong, they rarely thank you for the education. They remember the humiliation long after they've forgotten the lesson. I learned to ask myself a crucial question. Before engaging in any disagreement, is this hill worth dying on? Sometimes the answer is yes. If someone is spreading harmful misinformation or advocating for something that could hurt others, then the argument may be necessary. But most arguments are about trivial matters whose memory is more accurate. Which restaurant is better? What movie won the Academy Award in 1973? One of my students, Patricia, was notorious for correcting everyone. She had an exceptional memory and couldn't resist pointing out when others got facts wrong. She was the walking embodiment of actually always ready with a correction or clarification. Patricia was intelligent and well-informed, but her relationships suffered because people felt uncomfortable around her constant corrections. The breakthrough came when I challenged Patricia to go 1 week without correcting anyone unless it was absolutely necessary for their safety or well-being. The exercise was torturous for her initially, but the results were revelatory. People began seeking her out more often, sharing more personal thoughts, and including her in social activities. When she stopped making others feel stupid, they started making her feel welcome. I discovered that there's an art to disagreeing without being disagreeable. You can express a different viewpoint without attacking the person who holds the original view. You can share alternative information without making someone feel foolish for not knowing it. You can maintain your position while allowing others to save face. The language of graceful disagreement became one of my most taught skills. That's an interesting perspective. Have you considered this angle instead of "you're wrong"? Or "I've had a different experience" instead of "that's not how it works"? Or "I wonder if there might be another way to look at this" instead of "you don't understand"? I learned that people don't change their minds because you prove them wrong. They change their minds when they discover new information in a way that doesn't threaten their self-esteem. When you allow people to save face while considering new ideas, you create space for genuine learning and growth. The wisest approach to most disagreements became clear. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Try to see the situation from their perspective before insisting they see it from yours. Often, you'll discover that you're not even arguing about the same thing. In all my years of studying human nature, I discovered that people have one hunger, more powerful than the need for food. The hunger to feel important, to feel valued, to feel like their life matters. This hunger drives more behavior than we realize, and those who learn to feed it in others become magnetic personalities who attract loyalty and admiration. Remember visiting a hotel where the elderly doorman greeted every guest by name, asked about their family members, and remembered details from previous conversations. The hotel lobby wasn't particularly impressive, but guests returned specifically because of how this man made them feel. He possessed what I came to call golden spotlight energy, the ability to make others feel like the most important person in the room. This principle transformed how I approached every interaction. Instead of thinking, "How can I impress this person?" I began asking, "How can I make this person feel valued?" The shift was subtle but revolutionary. When you focus on elevating others rather than elevating yourself, something beautiful happens. You naturally become elevated in their estimation. I taught my students to look for opportunities to make others feel significant. This doesn't mean empty flattery or false praise. People can sense insincerity immediately. It means finding genuine reasons to appreciate others and expressing that appreciation specifically and personally. One of my most successful students was a young manager named David who struggled with employee morale. His team was competent but disengaged, doing the minimum required but showing no enthusiasm for their work. David's initial approach was to motivate through criticism, pointing out errors and pushing for better performance. The results were predictably poor. The transformation began when David learned to catch people doing things right instead of catching them doing things wrong. He started noticing when employees showed initiative, helped colleagues, or contributed ideas. Instead of general praise like "good job," he offered specific appreciation. "I noticed how you helped Sarah understand the new system yesterday. Your patience and clear explanation probably saved her hours of frustration." Within months, David's team became one of the most productive in the company. People began staying late voluntarily, suggesting improvements, and taking pride in their work. They weren't working harder to avoid criticism. They were working harder because they felt valued and important. The magic happens when people feel genuinely seen and appreciated for their unique contributions. A security guard who feels acknowledged for keeping everyone safe will take more pride in his work than one who feels invisible. A teacher who feels appreciated for inspiring young minds will put more creativity into her lessons than one who feels taken for granted. I learned to find the dignity in every role, the value in every contribution. The janitor wasn't just cleaning floors. He was creating an environment where people could focus on their important work. The receptionist wasn't just answering phones. She was the first impression visitors had of the organization. The waiter wasn't just serving food. He was creating an experience that could make or ruin someone's evening. The multiplication effect of making others feel important is remarkable. When people feel valued, they become more valuable. They rise to meet the appreciation you've shown them. They work harder, contribute more, and treat others with the same respect they've received. But here's the most beautiful part. When you make others feel important, you don't become less important, you become more important to them. You become associated with one of life's greatest pleasures, feeling truly valued. People will seek you out, trust you more, and want to work with you because you give them something precious that most people withhold: genuine recognition of their worth. Asterisk. I once knew a talented writer who poisoned her own joy by constantly comparing her work to others. She would read a brilliant article and immediately feel inadequate about her own writing. She would see a colleague's promotion and question her own worth. She had drunk from what I call the poisoned well of comparison, and it contaminated everything good in her life. This woman's struggle taught me that comparison is one of the greatest destroyers of authentic connection and personal contentment. When we're constantly measuring ourselves against others, we cannot genuinely celebrate their success or appreciate our own unique journey. We become competitors in a game where everyone loses. I observed this pattern repeatedly in my classes and consulting work. People would enter rooms scanning for who was more successful, more attractive, more accomplished. They would listen to others' achievements through the filter of how does this make me look, instead of how wonderful for them. Their ability to form genuine relationships was handicapped by their competitive mindset. The tragedy of comparison is that it robs us of two precious experiences: the joy of celebrating others and the satisfaction of appreciating our own progress. When someone else's success makes you feel diminished, you've lost the opportunity to be inspired by their achievement. When your own accomplishments feel meaningless because someone else has done better, you've stolen your own victory. I learned that comparison operates on a false premise, that life is a zero-sum game where someone else's gain is your loss. In reality, another person's success doesn't diminish your potential for success. Their happiness doesn't reduce the happiness available to you. Their talents don't make your talents less valuable. One of my students, Michael, struggled with this poisonous thinking. He worked in sales and couldn't celebrate when colleagues had good months because it made him feel like a failure. He would analyze their techniques, not to learn, but to find flaws, to protect his ego from feeling inferior. This competitive mindset made him exhausting to be around and actually hurt his performance because he was focused on others instead of his own improvement. The transformation began when Michael learned to view others' success as proof of what was possible rather than evidence of his inadequacy. When a colleague had an exceptional month, instead of feeling threatened, Michael began asking genuine questions about their approach. He stopped protecting his ego and started feeding his curiosity. The shift was remarkable. Not only did Michael's relationships with colleagues improve, but his own performance soared. When he stopped wasting energy on comparison and competition, he could focus entirely on his own growth and development. His colleagues began sharing strategies with him because they sensed his genuine interest rather than his hidden competition. I discovered that abundance thinking is the antidote to comparison poison. When you truly believe there's enough success, recognition, and happiness for everyone, you can genuinely celebrate others without feeling diminished. You can appreciate your own progress without needing to be better than someone else. The most magnetic people I've known share this quality. They can celebrate others' achievements without reservation because they don't see those achievements as threats to their own worth. They understand that your success doesn't limit their potential, and their success doesn't limit yours. Asterisk, asterisk, I once watched a master craftsman build a stone bridge that would last for centuries. Each stone was carefully selected, positioned with precision, and secured with patience. The process was slow and deliberate, but the result was a structure that could withstand any storm. Building relationships, I realized, requires the same careful attention and long-term thinking. Most people approach difficult relationships like they're building walls instead of bridges. When someone disagrees with them, they become defensive. When someone criticizes them, they counterattack. When someone seems hostile, they retreat or retaliate. Each reaction adds another stone to the wall between them, making future connection more difficult. I learned that every interaction presents a choice. Will you build a bridge or will you build a wall? The choice isn't always easy, especially when dealing with people who seem determined to misunderstand you, oppose you, or make your life difficult. But I discovered that bridge building is almost always the wiser, long-term strategy. One of my most challenging experiences involved a business partner who openly criticized my methods and questioned my expertise in front of potential clients. My first instinct was to defend myself, to prove him wrong, to put him in his place. Instead, I chose a different approach. After the meeting, I asked him privately about his concerns and listened to his perspective without arguing. What I discovered surprised me. His criticism wasn't born from malice, but from genuine worry about our business direction. He had valuable insights I had been too proud to hear. By choosing to build a bridge instead of a wall, I gained not only his respect but also his valuable contributions to our work. Bridge building requires tools that most people don't naturally use: patience, humility, curiosity, and long-term thinking. You must be willing to see the situation from the other person's perspective, even when they haven't extended the same courtesy to you. You must be willing to find common ground, even when the differences seem vast. I taught my students to look for shared interests, values, or goals, even with people who seemed completely opposed to them. A union leader and a company executive might disagree on methods but share the goal of a successful business. A parent and teenager might clash on rules but both want safety and independence. Finding these connection points becomes the foundation for your bridge. One of my students, Sarah, used these principles to transform a hostile work environment. She had inherited a team that was divided into factions, each blaming the others for poor performance. Instead of taking sides or trying to force cooperation, Sarah began having individual conversations with each person to understand their perspective and concerns. She discovered that what looked like personality conflicts were actually structural problems and miscommunications. The accounting team felt the sales team made unrealistic promises to clients. The sales team felt the accounting team was inflexible and unresponsive. Both teams wanted the company to succeed and clients to be satisfied, but they had different ideas about how to achieve these goals. Sarah became the bridge builder, helping each team understand the other's challenges and constraints. She facilitated conversations where teams could express their concerns and work together on solutions. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was thorough. Within 6 months, the hostile environment had become a collaborative one. The patience required for bridge building is significant, Unlike walls, which can be built quickly in the heat of emotion, bridges require careful planning and sustained effort. You must be willing to invest time in understanding others, even when they haven't invested time in understanding you. You must be willing to take the first step toward connection, even when you feel the other person should take it first. I watched a diplomat at a tense international meeting demonstrate something I had never seen before: the ability to disagree completely with someone while making them feel respected and heard. He wielded disagreement like a master swordsman wields a blade, with precision, grace, and respect for his opponent. This moment taught me that disagreement doesn't have to be disagreeable, and opposition doesn't have to be hostile. The art of graceful disagreement became one of my most studied and taught principles. Most people believe they only have two options when facing opposition: surrender their position or attack the other person's. But there's a third way: maintaining your integrity while honoring the dignity of those who disagree with you. I learned that the language of disagreement matters enormously. The difference between "you're wrong" and "I see it differently" might seem minor, but the impact on relationships is profound. The first statement attacks the person's judgment and intelligence. The second acknowledges different perspectives can coexist. One of my students, Robert, was a brilliant engineer whose career stalled because he couldn't disagree without being disagreeable. In meetings, when colleagues proposed solutions he believed were flawed, he would bluntly say things like "that won't work," or "that's not how engineering works." His technical expertise was unquestionable, but his inability to disagree gracefully made people reluctant to work with him. The transformation began when Robert learned to frame his disagreements as contributions rather than corrections. Instead of "that approach is wrong," he began saying, "That's an interesting approach. I wonder if we might also consider the structural implications." Instead of "you don't understand the physics," he would say, "My experience with similar projects suggests we might encounter some challenges with that design." The change in how colleagues responded to Robert was immediate and dramatic. People began seeking his input rather than avoiding it. His technical insights were more readily accepted because they were delivered with respect rather than condescension. Robert's career advanced rapidly once he learned that how you disagree is often more important than what you disagree about. I discovered that graceful disagreement requires what I call diplomatic courage, the strength to maintain your position, combined with the grace to honor others' perspectives. You must be firm enough to stand for your principles, yet flexible enough to consider that you might be wrong or that there might be wisdom in other viewpoints. The most effective disagreement often begins with finding points of agreement. I agree that customer satisfaction is our top priority, and I have a different idea about how to achieve it. I share your concern about the timeline, and I wonder if there's another way to address it. Starting with common ground creates a foundation for productive discussion rather than defensive argument. I learned to separate the person from the position. You can respect someone's intelligence and character while disagreeing with their conclusion. You can honor their experience while questioning their recommendation. This separation allows you to challenge ideas without attacking identity. The timing and setting of disagreement matter as much as the words you use. Public disagreement can feel like humiliation, even when delivered gracefully. Private conversation allows people to reconsider their position without losing face. Immediate disagreement can feel like an attack, while thoughtful disagreement shows respect for the complexity of the issue. When you master graceful disagreement, something remarkable happens. People begin to trust your judgment more, not less. They know that when you agree with them, it's not because you're trying to please them, but because you genuinely believe they're right. Your agreements carry more weight because your disagreements have shown such integrity. I once watched a man hold a butterfly in his cupped hands, desperate to keep it from flying away. The more tightly he closed his fingers, the more the creature struggled. Finally, Understanding that his grip was harming what he loved, he opened his hands completely. The butterfly rested for a moment on his palm, then flew away, but not before gifting him with a moment of perfect beauty that only came through letting go. This image became my metaphor for one of life's most difficult lessons, the freedom that comes from releasing our need to control others' opinions, reactions, and decisions. For years, I exhausted myself trying to manage how people perceived me, what they thought about my ideas, and how they responded to my efforts. I was like that man with the butterfly, holding so tightly to outcomes that I was destroying the very thing I wanted to preserve. The breakthrough came during a particularly challenging lecture series. Despite my best efforts, one participant remained hostile and critical throughout the entire program. I found myself adjusting my content, changing my delivery style, and even altering my examples to try to win him over. The more I tried to control his response, the more resistant he became and the more exhausted I felt. Finally, I made a decision that transformed my approach to all human relations. I would focus entirely on giving my best effort and let go of controlling his reaction. I would speak my truth, share my insights, and offer my best work. But I would not contort myself to force a particular response from him. The liberation was immediate and profound. When I stopped trying to control his opinion, I could focus completely on serving the other participants who were benefiting from the program. My energy shifted from defensive reaction to positive contribution. Ironically, when I stopped trying to win over the critical participant, several others approached me to express how much the program had helped them. I learned that we can influence, but never control. We can plant seeds, but cannot force them to grow according to our timeline. We can offer our best efforts, but cannot guarantee specific outcomes. When we try to control what lies beyond our influence, we waste energy that could be better spent on what we actually can control: our effort, our attitude, our response. One of my students, Jennifer, struggled with this principle in her role. As a manager, she would become frustrated when team members didn't implement her suggestions exactly as she envisioned, or when they didn't seem enthusiastic about initiatives she was passionate about. She spent enormous energy trying to control their level of engagement and their specific responses. The transformation began when Jennifer learned to focus on what she could control, providing clear direction, offering support, creating good working conditions, and recognizing good work. She stopped trying to manufacture enthusiasm and started trusting that her consistent leadership would create the conditions for natural engagement. The results exceeded her expectations. When Jennifer stopped trying to control her team's reactions, she became a more relaxed and effective leader. Her team responded better to her guidance because they didn't feel manipulated or pressured. They began taking more initiative because they felt trusted rather than micromanaged. I discovered that letting go of control is not passive resignation, it's active wisdom. You continue to do your best work, express your authentic thoughts, and pursue your meaningful goals. But you release attachment to specific outcomes and trust that your genuine efforts will create positive results, even if they're different from what you originally envisioned. The peace that comes from this release is extraordinary. When you stop trying to control others' reactions, you can be fully present in your interactions. When you stop managing outcomes, you can enjoy the process. When you stop forcing responses, you can appreciate the responses that come naturally. In my garden, I planted a small oak tree that seemed insignificant compared to the established trees around it. For years, it appeared to grow slowly, adding only inches each season, while I questioned whether it would ever amount to anything substantial. But I had underestimated the power of deep roots and patient growth. 20 years later, that modest sapling had become a magnificent oak with branches that sheltered half my property and roots that ran deeper than any other tree in the neighborhood. Authentic relationships grow with the same patient, compound power. Each genuine interaction, each moment of real connection, each act of sincere interest in others creates roots that run deep and branches that spread wide. The effects aren't always immediately visible, but over time, they create a network of trust, influence, and mutual support that becomes invaluable. I discovered this principle through my own experience building relationships over decades. Students from my early classes became business leaders who recommended my services to their organizations. Colleagues I had treated with respect and genuine interest became referral sources and collaborative partners. People I had helped feel important remembered that feeling and sought opportunities to work with me again. The mathematics of relationship building are fascinating. When you authentically connect with one person, you don't just gain access to that individual, you gain potential access to everyone in their network. When someone trusts you and values your character, they become an advocate who opens doors you never knew existed. One of my former students, Charles, exemplified this principle beautifully. As a young salesman, he focused on building genuine relationships with clients rather than just closing deals. He remembered their children's names, asked about their hobbies, and showed sincere interest in their business challenges. His sales numbers were good, but not exceptional in his first few years. However, as time passed, Charles's relationship-based approach began to compound dramatically. Satisfied clients referred new prospects. Former clients moved to new companies and brought Charles with them as their preferred vendor. Industry colleagues recommended him for opportunities because they trusted his character and integrity. By mid-career, Charles rarely had to seek new business. He came to him through his network of authentic relationships. The contrast with his colleagues was striking. Those who had focused solely on short-term sales techniques and impressive presentations often found themselves starting over with each new prospect. They had to constantly hunt for new opportunities because they hadn't built the deep relationships that create ongoing referrals and repeat business. I observed this pattern across industries and professions. Doctors who treated patients as whole human beings rather than just medical cases built practices filled with loyal patients who referred family and friends. Teachers who genuinely cared about students as individuals found those students, returning years later to thank them and seek their advice. Managers who invested in authentic relationships with their teams found those former employees becoming valuable connections throughout their careers. The branching effect of authentic relationships extends beyond professional benefits. When you consistently treat people with genuine respect and interest, you create a reputation that precedes you. People begin describing you as someone who really cares about others or makes everyone feel important. This reputation attracts more people who want to experience that kind of interaction. But perhaps the most valuable compound effect is the transformation that occurs within yourself. As you practice genuine interest in others, you become a genuinely interesting person. As you focus on making others feel important, you develop the confidence that comes from knowing you add value to people's lives. As you build authentic connections, you become someone others naturally want to be around. The time investment required for authentic relationship building can seem inefficient in our fast-paced world. It's quicker to impress someone with a polished presentation than to genuinely understand their perspective. It's easier to network strategically than to connect authentically. But the long-term returns on authentic relationship investment far exceed those of any short-term impression strategy. Like that oak tree in my garden, the relationships you build authentically today will provide shelter, support, and beauty for decades to come. Asterisk, asterisk, after decades of teaching these principles, I learned that knowledge without application is merely entertainment. The most brilliant insights about human nature mean nothing if they remain locked in your mind rather than expressed through your daily actions. So let me share the practical toolkit. I developed to help thousands of people transform their relationships from performance-based to authentically based. Your transformation begins each morning before you interact with a single person. I taught my students to start each day with what I called the authenticity intention, a simple commitment to approach every interaction with genuine interest rather than the need to impress. Before leaving home, ask yourself, how can I make others feel valued today? Instead of, how can I make a good impression today? This shift in morning intention changes everything that follows. When you enter conversations seeking to understand rather than to be understood, when you listen for what you can learn rather than for your turn to speak, when you look for what you can appreciate about others rather than what they might appreciate about you, the entire dynamic of human interaction transforms. I developed specific conversation techniques that anyone can master. When someone shares an experience, instead of immediately relating it to your own experience, ask a follow-up question that shows you're genuinely interested in their unique perspective. What was the most surprising part of that for you? Or how did that change your thinking? These questions demonstrate that you value their experience for its own sake, not just as a launching pad for your own stories. In workplace settings, practice what I called contribution conversations. Instead of meetings where you try to showcase your intelligence, focus on contributing value to the discussion. Before speaking, ask yourself, will this comment help the team solve the problem? Or am I just trying to sound smart? This filter dramatically improves both the quality of meetings and your reputation as someone who adds real value. Social media and digital communication require special attention in our modern world. The platforms seem designed to encourage impression management, carefully curated photos, witty comments designed for maximum likes, posts calculated to showcase success. I taught my students to use these tools authentically, shared genuine experiences including failures and lessons learned, comment with real interest rather than attempts to be clever, and resist the urge to present a perfect life that doesn't exist. One of my most successful exercises involved what I called the weekly appreciation practice. Each week, identify 3 people who have made a positive impact on your life and tell them specifically what you appreciate about them. Not generic praise like you're great, but specific recognition. I appreciated how you listened without judgment when I was struggling with that decision last month. Your patience helped me think more clearly. When dealing with difficult people, and we all encounter them, practice the diplomatic response technique. Before reacting to criticism, hostility, or unreasonableness, pause and ask yourself, what might be driving this person's behavior? Often, difficult behavior stems from feeling unheard, unvalued, or misunderstood. Your response can either escalate the situation or diffuse it. Create accountability systems for staying authentic. Find a trusted friend or colleague who can gently point out when you're slipping back into performance mode. Ask them to notice when you're trying too hard to impress rather than connect. This outside perspective is invaluable because we often don't realize when we're performing. Practice recovering gracefully from authenticity lapses. When you catch yourself showing off or trying to impress someone, don't abandon authenticity altogether. Simply redirect. Actually, let me stop talking about myself and ask about your experience with this. People respect self-awareness and course correction more than they admire perfect performance. Develop daily exercises for building genuine interest in others. During routine interactions with cashiers, colleagues, neighbors, practice asking one genuine question about their experience or perspective. How has your day been treating you? Or what's the most interesting part of your work? These small moments of connection compound over time into a natural habit of authentic interest. Asterisk. I want you to imagine a person who walks into any room with quiet confidence, not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because they're genuinely interested in the people they'll meet. Picture someone who listens more than they speak, who asks questions that make others feel heard, who celebrates others' successes without feeling diminished. Envision an individual who can disagree respectfully, admit mistakes gracefully, and stand firm in their principles while remaining kind to those who oppose them. This person exists, and they can be you. But first, you must let go of the exhausted performer you've been carrying around, the one who rehearses conversations, calculates responses for maximum impact, and monitors every interaction for signs of approval or disapproval. That person has served their purpose by protecting you from rejection, but they're also preventing you from experiencing genuine connection. The transformation I'm describing isn't just theoretical. I witnessed it thousands of times in my students and experienced it myself. When Margaret stopped trying to say the perfect thing in every conversation and started asking genuine questions about others' experiences, she discovered that people began seeking her out for advice and friendship. When Robert stopped correcting everyone's minor factual errors and started appreciating their unique perspectives, his colleagues began including him in important projects and social gatherings. The energy you'll reclaim is extraordinary. Consider how much mental energy you currently spend on impression management, calculating what to say, analyzing others' reactions, rehearsing conversations, worrying about how you came across, adjusting your personality to fit different situations. When you stop performing and start being authentic, all that energy becomes available for more meaningful pursuits. Your relationships will deepen in ways that surprise you. When you stop hiding your imperfections, people feel permission to share theirs. When you stop trying to be impressive, people feel comfortable being themselves around you. When you stop competing with others, they stop competing with you. The connections you build become sources of genuine support, insight, and joy rather than arenas for performance anxiety. Professionally, the transformation is equally profound. When you focus on contributing value rather than showcasing intelligence, colleagues begin to trust your judgment. When you ask questions from genuine curiosity rather than trying to demonstrate expertise, you learn more and make better decisions. When you make others feel important rather than trying to appear important yourself, you become the kind of person others want to work with and promote. But perhaps the most beautiful change is internal. You'll discover a confidence that doesn't depend on others' approval, quiet self-assurance that comes from knowing you're being genuine rather than performing. You'll experience the relief of not having to remember which version of yourself you presented to different people. You'll enjoy the freedom of saying, "I don't know," when you don't know, of making mistakes without shame, of being human without apology. People will respond to your transformed presence in ways that seem magical, but are actually natural. When someone feels genuinely seen and appreciated by you, they want to be around you more. When someone experiences non-judgmental acceptance from you, they begin to associate you with safety and comfort. When someone feels elevated by your attention and interest, they remember how you make them feel. The ripple effects extend far beyond your immediate relationships. Your family will experience a more present, less anxious version of you. Your children will learn authentic confidence by watching you model it. Your colleagues will feel more comfortable bringing their real selves to work because you've made it safe to be genuine. You'll also discover that the people who are attracted to your authentic self are the people worth knowing. Those who prefer the performed version of you aren't truly connected to you anyway. They're connected to an image you've created. The relationships you build through authenticity are more satisfying, more supportive, and more enduring because they're based on who you really are rather than who you think you should be. Asterisk, asterisk. Here you stand at a doorway that opens onto unlimited possibility. Behind you lies the exhausting world of performance, impression management, and people-pleasing. Ahead of you stretches a life of authentic connection, genuine influence, and meaningful relationships. The choice is entirely yours, but I want you to understand what hangs in the balance. If you choose to continue trying to impress everyone, you'll remain trapped in the golden cage we discussed earlier. You'll spend your precious life energy managing others' perceptions instead of building real connections. You'll accumulate superficial relationships that provide neither deep satisfaction nor genuine support. You'll reach the end of your life, having been known by many but truly understood by few. But if you choose authenticity, if you have the courage to stop performing and start connecting, you'll discover what I discovered all those years ago in that red schoolhouse. Your imperfect, genuine, beautifully human self is far more compelling than any perfect performance you could deliver. Your first steps are simple but not easy. Today, in your very next conversation, resist the urge to impress. Instead, focus completely on understanding the other person's perspective. Ask a question you're genuinely curious about. Listen to their answer without planning your response. Show appreciation for something specific they've shared. Notice how differently it feels to connect rather than perform. This week, practice admitting when you don't know something instead of pretending expertise you don't possess. Say, "I don't know, but that's an interesting question," or "I've never thought about it, that way told me more." Watch how people respond when you give them space to be the expert instead of claiming that role for yourself. This month, find the courage to disagree respectfully with someone whose opinion differs from yours. Express your perspective without attacking theirs. Stand firm in your principles while honoring their right to see things differently. Discover that you can maintain your integrity without destroying relationships. The path requires courage because our culture often rewards performance over authenticity. You'll encounter people who prefer the impressive version of you to the real version. You'll face situations where being genuine feels riskier than being impressive. You'll have moments when you question whether authenticity is worth the temporary discomfort. But I promise you this: every person who has made the journey from performance to authenticity has told me it was the most liberating transformation of their life. They wish they had found the courage to be genuine sooner. They can't imagine returning to the exhausting world of constant impression management. You have everything you need to begin this transformation today. You don't need more confidence, more skills, or more knowledge. You simply need the courage to stop hiding who you are and start sharing who you are. You need the willingness to be interested instead of trying to be interesting, to listen instead of waiting to speak, to appreciate instead of seeking appreciation. The people who will matter most in your life, your true friends, your most trusted colleagues, your deepest relationships, waiting to meet the real you. They're not impressed by your performance. They're drawn to your authenticity. They don't want your perfect presentation. They want your genuine presence. I'm an old man now, and I've seen the end of many lives. Those who lived authentically face their final days with peace, surrounded by people who truly knew and loved them. Those who spent their lives performing face the end with regret, wondering who they might have been if they'd had the courage to be themselves. Don't let that be your story. Step through the doorway, stop trying to impress everyone, and start connecting with the people who matter. Your authentic life is waiting, and it's more beautiful than any performance you could ever deliver. The choice is yours. The time is now. Your new beginning starts today.